It's time for another Nebraska Prep Zone report, sponsored today by MD West One, Nebraska's most advanced sports medicine, orthopedics, neurosurgery, and spine care, covering Greater Omaha for over 70 years. I'm your host, Jake Anderson. Joining me as always, Mike Sautter, fresh off a weekend in Lincoln, seeding high school playoffs.
I did not seed them. I just announced those seeds. That was about it.
We'll talk a little bit later what it was like being there in Lincoln for that day, but let's start right off the top with the debate that everyone has wanted to talk about. Number one, Bellevue West. Not that they aren't deserving, but there are a lot of people who are shocked that Omaha West Side, the two, isn't above them.
Well, I think the committee that seated these, which were 5 Class A athletic directors from across the state, they're the ones that put it together. It wasn't me or media people. Yes, there were a handful of media people that had sort of a say or had their say, just like every high school coach in the state sent in their ballots, if you will, or how they would seat it. There were 4 media members that were asked to do that. I was one of those. I talked to a committee member, and really what they said was wildcard points played a factor. And after last week, Bellevue West was the top wildcard point team. They were number 1 in wildcard points, and Omaha West Side was 4th. So that goes to strength of schedule and different things. Another factor was the majority of ballots, if you will, or seeds that came in from the coaches had Bellevue West at 1. Another reason why I guess the committee decided to keep Bellevue West 1 is they're the defending champs and they haven't lost this year. And, until someone beats them, they're the one. Really, at the end of the day, 1 and 2, I think everyone agrees were Bellevue West and Omaha West Side. I'm not sure anyone debates that fact. So as long as they're on opposite sides of each other, it really doesn't matter that much. But there was, talk of, there's a lot of talk, I guess, out there that, Omaha West Side is better and deserved to be the one. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter as long as they're opposite each other. And there will be teams that have they're saying it too. I mean, you look at like Lincoln Southeast was 2nd in wildcard points, and they got the 5 seed. So
4 seed.
4 seed. I mean, so they dropped a little bit. And I think part of the thinking was they wanted to avoid rematches or potential rematches the best that they could. So having Southeast be the 4 and Millard South be the 3 avoids that potential rematch in a semifinal of Bellevue West and Millard South. So that avoids that. And so putting Millard South at 3 opposite West Side, if the seeds hold and all of that is
and to your point,
thinking.
Yeah, to your point, West Side and Bellevue West were the top 2 teams. Having West Side at 2 is not egregious. At the end of the day, as you said, it's personal preference. It's who people thought was the best team, and both teams are undefeated, and they'll get the chance to prove it now. We should mention as well with wild card points, the makeup games weren't included in those. I was told there'd be no math, so I'm not going to calculate it and see where it would be with those makeup games. But real quick, to run down the other top 8 teams who get a bye. Millard South, as you mentioned, the 3. Lincoln Southeast, the 4. The 5 is Elkhorn South. 6 is Creighton Prep. 7 is Lincoln East. And the 8 is Gretna. All those teams get a bye. And, so they'll be playing October 30th. But in the first round, we have those play-in games, the 9 through 24 teams.
Right. And those top 8, I think I'm pretty sure everyone agreed on the top 8. now if Kearney were to would have beaten Elkhorn South on Friday, which was a game in overtime, Elkhorn South beat Kearney, that would have that would have been interesting to see what happened. That likely would have maybe bumped, not maybe, it would have bumped Gretna probably to 9, and they would have been playing this week. That being said, Gretna now has 2 byes along with Southeast because they were supposed to play last week on Thursday, and that game got canceled due to an abundance of caution of COVID concerns. So those teams have 2 weeks off. I don't know if that's good or bad, but they have 2 weeks off to prepare, get everyone healthy. Maybe if they did have kids quarantining, they can get some of those kids back. So those 2 teams are kind of, interesting. Bellevue West has a bye. I'm not sure they even want to bye. I mean, honestly, they've had so many byes this year anyway. It doesn't make a ton of sense. But, I think that they got it right. The top 8 teams are the top 8 teams. I don't see really outside of, maybe North Platte or Kearney. Those were, the 9 and 10. Those teams, maybe had a standing, but Kearney also, has won just 2 games this year. So, and East has had a nice season and hoping to potentially maybe make a run. Carson Waters is Noah Walters, the quarterback, is a phenomenal player, and if they can get Carter Glenn back at all in the postseason here and look to make a run with Carter Glenn, he's had a phenomenal year before he got hurt against Millard North.
Before we jump to previewing those playoff games and kind of talking which of those teams can make a run, let's wrap up real quick on those top 8 teams. Obviously, Bellevue West, obviously Omaha West Side can win the title. Obviously, any of the top 8 can win the title. Which of those teams besides Thunderbirds, Warriors, do you think has the best chance?
Yeah, if you look at it really, I mean, like I said, Kearney. So Kearney, and we'll touch on I have some notes, I guess, on Kearney. They've had the 4 toughest losses or played 4 of the top teams. And really, I think it sets up for them to potentially, I think everyone outside of a player at Northeast and the coaching staff at Northeast, maybe parents, think that they might be able to beat Kearney. But everyone else, I think, thinks that Kearney will advance and beat Northeast, who is the last seed. Sets up a really intriguing game against Gretna. And if Kearney can get by Gretna, if you just look at kind of common opponents and all that stuff, and maybe it favors Kearney to win, but they'd have to do it at Gretna. They're a team that I think could make a run and potentially, play a Bellevue West in a quarterfinal, which those 2 have already played and wasn't super great. So wasn't that close. I guess it was for a little bit. Another team you look at that's playing really well is Millard North at 11. If they get by Norfolk, which I think a lot of people think they can, sets up a game against Prep, and Prep playing better and really throwing the ball around a little bit more. So weather could be a factor. If they were playing this week, it'd definitely be a factor. Can Millard North make a run and maybe knock off a Prep? That's something there. And North Platte obviously being the 10, potentially playing, Lincoln East in that second round. Can they run the ball enough or keep the ball out of Walter's hands, or that Lincoln East kind of high-powered offense enough to upset them? So those are the 3 teams that you look at that could potentially make a nice run. And Millard North, let's say if they do beat Prep, which I think will be a really close / tough game, then they potentially get a Millard South in a quarterfinal if Millard South can get by the winner of Bellevue East or Millard West. And you never know. That's a big rivalry game. They played earlier in the year. Millard South won sort of handily, I guess. Um,
What about those teams seeded 3 through 8? Who got the best draw in of those 6?
um, I think probably Elkhorn South. Elkhorn South is playing pretty good right now. Not pretty good. They're playing really good right now. And being the 5, they potentially match up against a 4 in the Southeast, and both teams just like to line up and smack you and run the ball and play good defense, and not a ton of passes happening in that game. I could see if it happens. Elkhorn South probably has the best ish draw, I guess. To make a nice run and potentially see a Bellevue West if they can get by Southeast. And if Southeast and Elkhorn South play each other, it might be like 14-10. I mean, it could be a really low scoring, just run the ball, play good defense game. So Miller South is playing really well. And there was a lot of chatter about, hey, Elkhorn South deserves the 3. Even though, they lost to Millard South earlier in the year, but they lost without their starting quarterback and their two of their best, if not the best defenders in that game, and it was a close game. So, that maybe changes some things if they win that game, obviously. So I do think Elkhorn South is probably, one of the outside of the top 2 that looks like they could make a pretty significant run.
Okay, enough looking ahead. Let's talk some actual football that's going to be played this week. And let's start at the top of the bracket with number 16, Lincoln North Star. All the higher seeds will be hosting. So they'll face number 17, Lincoln Southwest. That's a Lincoln game, so it doesn't, the host in that one doesn't really matter too much. Winner of that one will face Bellevue West. What should we expect from that 16-17 matchup?
Well, the game will be at Seacrest, so that's nothing new there, right? They're used to being away teams and home teams and all that stuff at Seacrest. They all play their games, their home games and in city games at Seacrest. So nothing too, crazy about travel or anything like that. It is a rivalry game. North Star, I'll start with them. They've lost 4 in a row. Coming into the playoffs, they're on the season. They're giving up 28.8 points a game, and they're scoring 18.5 a game. Southwest has won 3 in a row coming into the game, so they're obviously a little bit of a hot streak. They're scoring 18 points a game, so both teams are scoring about 18 a game. Southwest has given up about 23 a game, or right at 23 points a game. So obviously you look at it and you're like, okay, and they didn't play earlier in the year. So, you look at that game and you're like, all right, first one to 21 wins, maybe, if you just kind of dig into the numbers a little bit there.
Yeah. And then we talked the 9-24 a little bit earlier, Kearney hosting Lincoln Northeast. As noted, they'll advance to face the winner of that will advance to face Gretna. We noted Lincoln Northeast, probably not much of a chance, but what needs to happen for them to pull an upset?
I'm never going to say no chance, but it looks like a very much so uphill battle for the Rockets.
Odds. How about that?
They haven't had no wins and the lowest seed and all that. Kearney's very interesting, right? They're 2-4, but they have 4 really tough losses, right? Their 4 losses are against one of the top 5 seeds. So they lost to Lincoln Southeast in week 1, 14-10. They threw an interception in the end zone, which if that's not an interception, maybe it's a touchdown, then obviously that changes that game. And Kearney wins that game because it was a last second kind of deal. Then they lost to Westside. So they lost to the 4 seed, 14-10. Then they lost to Westside 47-14 at Kearney, home game. Obviously, we know Westside's really good. Then they lost at Bellevue West 49-14. And then just, this past week, they lost to Elkhorn South in overtime 28-21. Really close game and would have flipped kind of the seeding totally on its head, prior to Friday night. So their 2 wins are against Columbus and Lincoln High. They handled Columbus 41-19 and beat Lincoln High 34-0. But just the fact that, I mean, if you look at their 4 losses, they're really good losses, if that's such a thing. But they probably played, I would say the toughest probably schedule, them or maybe Millard West. But like you said, I think Kearney, obviously, I think they advance, and they're much better than their record shows. I'll say that.
Yep. Moving on down the bracket, number 12 Fremont will host number 21 Papillion La Vista South. Winner of that one will move on to the 5 Elkhorn South.
Yeah. So Fremont's, both of them are scoring quite a bit. And Papio South gave Prep a really nice game last week on Thursday. They're playing a lot better coming down the stretch here, actually playing a lot more competitive, and they're scoring a lot. They've averaged on the year 23.4 points a game, and Fremont's averaged 24, a little over 24, almost 25 points a game. Both teams obviously can score the ball, so I expect a decently high-scoring game. Kind of a quirky common opponent thing here. Papio South lost to Grand Island by 1, 27-26. Fremont beat Grand Island 22-21 in overtime at Fremont. That's an interesting kind of thing. They both, it's a 1-point difference either way against a common opponent. So
transfer property means they'll tie.
let's I don't like necessarily doing that much, but it's just kind of an interesting kind of nugget there that they both do, and I would expect a decently kind of high scoring game. Fremont's lost 2 in a row coming here, but it's not super surprising considering they played who they played. And Papio South, like I said, is playing better, more competitive. They're just a young team. Their core is really young, and obviously get some experience under their belt as the season went on. So that game, I think, could be pretty highly competitive, I would expect.
Definitely. Moving down the bracket, number 13 Columbus hosting number 20 Papillion La Vista. Winner of that one will advance to face the 4 seed Lincoln Southeast. And Columbus put a little bit of a scare in Bellevue West, and Papillion La Vista has had some good games this year as well. So this one, another one, should be highly competitive.
Yeah, Columbus. That was obviously, I was there Thursday night when they played Bellevue West. It was surprising. I mean, they're tough, they're competitive, they play hard, coach really, really well. Their offense is a little bit quirky, which is kind of tough to prepare for. Papillion kind of sort of reeling, I guess, losing to Bellevue East last week on Friday Thursday. But Papillion was without 8 of their top 11 or 8 starters on defense for that game. So Papillion likely, hopefully maybe they get everyone back or not, I don't know. But they do have really good athletes. Papillion does, and it's just a matter of, I think, kind of putting it all together. But that Columbus, even in a loss, which turned out to be in kind of blowout fashion in the second half against a really good Bellevue West team, Columbus showed some things. So we'll see. Like I think that game could be a decently competitive game, and it should be an interesting kind of one to watch.
And as the aforementioned Bellevue East, they're the 19. They'll be traveling to the number 14 Millard West, which could set up another potential Millard rivalry game. The winner will advance to the 3 seed Millard South. And I know you have another interesting nugget for Millard West.
Yeah, and so if Kearney hasn't played the toughest schedule, Millard West certainly has. All 7 of their games are against the top 11 seeds. Yes, they only have 1 win, and that was in week 2 against Millard North. They won 21-14. but all 7 of their games are against the top 11 seeds. No one else can say that. And Bellevue East comes into this game with a big win over Papillion La Vista. Then Bellevue East being the 19, if you started the season, you wouldn't have said that. You would have thought they'd be like 24, 23, 22, something like that as a seed. So good on them. Obviously getting better. They do have good athletes, Bellevue East does. It's just a matter of, I don't know, how much, in the line play is Millard West has some big, strong guys, and they're extremely well coached. It's just, kind of tough luck Millard West this year with some key injuries. One at quarterback. And so they're obviously, I think, played the tougher schedule of the two. And that just, when I dug into it a little bit, and they've played all 7 of their games against the top 11 seeds. Like, no one else can say that. It's crazy.
And that'll be a doubleheader at Buell. That'll be the late game. The first game will be Millard North hosting Norfolk. Millard North, the Mustangs, the 11, Norfolk, the 22 seed, and that winner will advance to face the number 6 Creighton Prep.
Yeah, Norfolk struggled obviously this year. After their week 1 win against Bellevue East, that's their only win. They beat Bellevue East 21-7. Millard North has won 3 of their last 4, 3-4 record, and their 4 losses. Again, talk about tough schedule. They lost to Millard South, Millard West, which we talked about. Elkhorn South, they lost 21-14, and Westside, they lost 44-14. So Millard North, we mentioned, is one of those dangerous teams. I can never say this kid's name right, but Jimmy Quaintance. Their starting quarterback has rushed for nearly 1,000 yards. He'll likely go over 1,000-yard mark. He has 950 rushing yards. Clearly their leader on offense. I think everyone would expect Millard North to win that game against Norfolk, who's, like I said, struggled this year.
And moving on to the last quarter of the bracket, number 10 North Platte will host number 23 Lincoln High, and that winner will advance to face the number 7 Lincoln East. Yeah,
North Platte, a nice home win, I guess, 17-7 over Millard West last week. North Platte was kind of one of those that maybe you thought could be in that, make the top 8, maybe 7 or 8. They really just run the ball and pound the ball. I mean, it's just control the clock and do that. I would expect more of the same against Lincoln High, who has struggled this year and hasn't been great. So traveling out there and playing North Platte in a likely cold, maybe a little bit wet game, and against a team that likes to just pound it and run the ball, it's going to be a tough challenge for Lincoln High.
And our last play-in game, the number 15 seed Islanders, Grand Island, hosting number 18 Lincoln Pius X, and that winner will advance to face the aforementioned 2 seed Omaha Westside.
So this is a rematch from week 2. Grand Island won 24-7. So making up, 17 points feels like a lot for Pius. Pius is coming in with a 3-game losing streak. They lost to Millard South, Columbus, and Norris. Grand Island, on the other hand, has won 2 of the last 3. One loss was in overtime, 38-35, and 2 overtimes against Millard North. So really, if you look at it, Grand Island's playing really well. Always a tough, well-coached team in Grand Island. Coach Tomlin does a terrific job, and there's a saying about Coach Tomlin that people have said for years: he gets the most out of less than anyone in the state. And we'll see. Grand Island's used to making a run in the playoffs, so we'll see if they can. They obviously have to kind of not look to that week 2 game and be like, oh, we're better, we won that game, we already beat these guys, kind of thing. Because it was, it's 17 points, but it's not that insurmountable.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to all these playing games, some good matchups, setting up some potential good matchups down the road. Real quick before we get out of here, why don't you talk on, kind of pull back the curtain for some people, and what was it like in Lincoln on Saturday?
Well, really, I mean, we just did I was just a part of the bracket kind of reveal show. When I will say, when I first was handed the Class A bracket, my reaction was, whoa. Like, I was kind of taken aback a little bit because I just expected, I guess, Omaha West Side to be the one. And then after, talking to people later, and it was explained to me, they said why Bellevue West got the one. So it was neat. I mean, kind of getting it before you get a first glance, you got to really, get your thoughts together real quick, and because it's like, bang, it's live. You're going like within a minute after you get the bracket. You look at it and it's just initial reaction. So the committee met at 8. I think they started at 8, and the bracket was done by 10. So really good job to Nate Niehaus, who's at the NSAA assistant director in charge of football. He, put the committee together and really got it done pretty quickly, actually. So I don't know, would I like to see a committee kind of thing or use some human element as far as playoff seedings are concerned? Yeah, I would. I think it's a little bit more fair than just using wildcard points. I mean, if you look at it, you look at wildcard points. Last year, Bellevue West was the 4 based just on wildcard points, and this year Westside would have been the 4 just if you just take wildcard points. So really, that's not a true kind of gauge of both of those teams if you take the last 2 years in A. So, this week it'll be Class B, C1, and C2, and the 6-man bracket. That'll be probably have all of that done by 10 o'clock, I'm guessing, on Saturday, and we'll be in Lincoln again for that. So those are just based on wildcard points. So people probably can just figure up their own wildcard points, of people with calculators and are really good at math and can figure that stuff up. Might have an idea of who they're going to play already or what it looks like before, the brackets actually get released.
So pure speculation, and I might put you on the spot a little bit here, but do you think that this year, and obviously it worked out that with no OPS, that it was 24 teams and it was a nice round even number to do it this way, but do you think this year will lead to change down the line, maybe not for all classes, but for Class A, that we do see every year 24 teams make it and there's a play-in round?
I don't think so. I think, because then you have the buys and all that. You'd have to, and it really just depends on every year what, some teams go up to A, some teams go down, some teams, move around a little bit. You're adding 2 more OPS schools, and so that'll be 9 OPS schools. I mean, that's a lot of numbers, and really, like, making the playoffs should be a reward, not just, hey, everyone makes it. I totally understand why they did it this year. Makes complete sense why they did it this year. But it should be a reward, not like, all right, well, everyone kind of makes it thing.
Do you think this will lead to a change in that it won't just be wild card points, and there may be a committee factor to it?
I would like to see it that way. Like I said, I think it might actually, maybe just an A. I think there's a possibility. There's a lot of talk. I know a lot of people kind of like this idea. Maybe it's just the 16 in A that get seeded, or top 16 or something like that in A, or maybe they do stick with 24. I don't know, but maybe you can take a portion of human element and a portion of wild card points and strength of schedule and those things, which is basically what wild card points are. So I'd like to see it. I think there's momentum for it. I do think that it would be a good thing.
It'll be interesting to see what happens down the line. But for now, we still have football being played, and we have some great matchups this week. Do you know where you're going to be at Thursday, Friday?
I don't know yet. Kind of waiting for the Pinnacle Bank game of the week to be a thing. to be decided. It's not quite sure yet. I might, depending on what the Pinnacle Bank game of the week is, I might actually head to Humphrey on Thursday for a doubleheader with Humphrey, Lindsay Holy Family playing, I think, at 3:30, and Humphrey St. Francis plays their first round playoff game at 7. So that could be kind of fun. Watch 2 8-man teams play, but I'll have to kind of wait and see on that.
We look forward to your coverage and the rest of the anyprepzone.com team's coverage. Until next time, thanks for listening.
As the official team doctors for high school and college teams across Greater Omaha, MD West One Sports Med Doctors can get you back into the game stronger than ever. Meet the Sports Med team at mdwest1.com or call 402-390-4111.